The door opened with a soft click that changed everything, even though at first it felt like nothing more than another small mistake in a life already crowded with them. Marcus Holloway had not meant to open that door. He was supposed to turn left toward the pediatric wing, where sunlight poured through wide windows and cartoon animals danced along the walls, where his 6-year-old son Jamir waited with a scraped knee and a brave smile. Instead, distracted by exhaustion and a phone buzzing with overdue bills, Marcus turned right. The hallway grew quieter, the light dimmer, and the air heavier, thick with the smell of antiseptic and endings. When he pushed open the wrong hospital door, he stepped into a room where time felt thin and fragile, and there he saw a woman who looked like she was already halfway gone from the world. That moment, quiet and accidental, would become the beginning of a love story born not from hope, but from kindness when hope felt impossible. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small compassionate moment can change an entire life, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Talk of Kindness, because stories like this only live on when we keep them alive together. Marcus Holloway was the kind of man most people never really noticed. He moved through the world carefully, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes always scanning for the next problem that needed solving. At 38, his face already carried the quiet lines of someone who had learned to endure rather than dream. He was a black single father raising Jamir alone since the car accident that took his wife, Nia, 3 years earlier. That loss had cracked his life cleanly in two, separating the before, when laughter came easily, and plans stretched far into the future, from the after, where every day felt like a careful balancing act between grief, responsibility, and survival. Marcus worked mornings as a city bus driver and afternoons at a small auto repair shop, hands permanently stained with grease, heart permanently tethered to the small boy who called him dad with complete trust. That morning had started like so many others, bathed in sharp daylight that made everything feel more exposed. Jamir had tripped on the school playground, skinning his knee badly enough to worry the nurse, who insisted Marcus come pick him up and take him to the hospital just in case. Marcus had arrived still wearing his bus driver uniform, his mind already calculating the lost wages, the missed hours, the groceries that would have to wait. Hospitals had never been easy places for him since Nia's death. Daylight streaming through glass doors did little to soften the memories of waiting rooms and bad news, of holding a hand that slowly grew colder. Still, he smiled for Jamir, carried him through the entrance, and told himself it would be quick. The mistake happened because Marcus was human, because exhaustion blurs signs and grief dulls instincts. He followed a nurse's directions halfway, then checked his phone, then turned the wrong way. The door he opened belonged to a private room at the end of the oncology wing, a place where daytime felt like an intruder rather than a comfort. Sunlight slipped in through half-closed blinds, casting pale stripes across white sheets and thinner walls. The woman on the bed looked toward him with slow curiosity rather than surprise, as if strangers accidentally wandering into her life had become expected. She was young in a way that felt unfair, maybe early 40s, with skin the color of warm honey and eyes that seemed far too alert for a body so still. Her head was wrapped in a soft scarf, and her hands rested on the blanket as if she had already learned not to move more than necessary. Machines hummed quietly beside her, keeping rhythm with a life that felt precariously borrowed. Marcus froze in the doorway, shame and apology rising in his chest, ready to retreat immediately. But something in her gaze stopped him. It was not fear or irritation, it was loneliness, bare and unguarded. Marcus apologized quickly, stumbling over his words, explaining he was lost, that he would leave right away. The woman watched him with a faint, tired smile that seemed to say she understood mistakes better than most. She told him it was all right, that visitors were rare and mistakes were sometimes the only way new things entered her days. Her voice was soft but steady, the sound of someone who had made peace with uncertainty. Marcus hesitated, then took a step inside, the door clicking shut behind him with quiet finality. Her name was Althea Brooks. She had been fighting a rare, aggressive cancer for nearly 2 years, a battle that had stripped her life down to essentials. She had once been a community college art instructor, she told him, someone who loved daylight and open spaces and the smell of fresh paint. Now her world was measured in good days and bad days, in test results and whispered conversations outside her door. Marcus listened because listening was something he knew how to do. As a bus driver, as a father, as a widower, he had learned that sometimes presence mattered more than solutions. He told her about Jamir waiting down the hall, about the scraped knee that had brought him there. He spoke about Nia without planning to, her name slipping out like a truth that needed air. Althea listened in return, her eyes never leaving his face, absorbing his story with the same quiet attentiveness he offered her. The daylight shifted as they talked, the sun climbing higher, casting warmth across the room that felt almost intentional. When a nurse eventually peeked in and gently reminded Marcus that visiting hours were limited, both of them seemed startled by how quickly time had passed. Marcus left that room shaken in a way he could not immediately explain. He found Jamir, got his knee cleaned and bandaged, carried him back out into the bright afternoon. Life resumed its usual pace, traffic humming, schedules pressing in. Yet Althea's face stayed with him, her calm acceptance of a future she could not control. That night after Jamir fell asleep, Marcus sat at the small kitchen table and stared at nothing for a long time, feeling something unfamiliar stirring beneath his grief. It was not hope exactly, but it was close enough to be frightening. He told himself he would not go back. Hospitals were places of endings and he had endured enough. But the next week, during a midday break between shifts, he found himself parking his bus and walking back through those glass doors. He told the receptionist he was there to see Althea Brooks, feeling foolish and intrusive. When he stepped into her room again, daylight poured in more generously this time, and her face lit up with genuine surprise that made his chest tight. Their connection grew slowly. Carefully, as if both understood how fragile it was, Marcus visited when he could, sometimes bringing Jamir, who drew pictures and taped them to the wall. Althea spoke to Jamir with a gentleness that made Marcus ache, never pitying, never pretending. She told stories about art and color, about how every shade carried emotion. Marcus found himself laughing more than he had in years, even in a room where machines still hummed and nurses still whispered. The challenges were constant and unromantic. Althea's health fluctuated unpredictably. Some days she was bright and engaged, others she was exhausted, barely able to lift her head. Marcus struggled with guilt, wondering if he was betraying Nia's memory by allowing another woman into his heart. He struggled with fear, knowing that loving someone who was dying meant agreeing to another loss. Jamir struggled too, growing attached in his innocent way, asking questions Marcus could not always answer. Daytime visits became the anchor of their weeks. The sun would move across the room as they talked about everything and nothing, about Marcus's childhood, about Althea's students, about Jamir's dreams of becoming an astronaut. Outside, life continued relentlessly, but inside that room, time softened. Marcus began to realize that love did not always arrive with certainty and plans. Sometimes it arrived quietly, asking only to be present. When doctors eventually told Althea that her treatment was no longer working, the words landed with a heaviness that pressed the air from Marcus's lungs. Althea accepted the news with the same calm she had shown since the day he met her. She told him she was not afraid of dying, only of leaving things unsaid. That night, under the bright honesty of hospital lights, Marcus admitted what had been growing in him for months, a love shaped by compassion, respect, and shared vulnerability. Loving her felt terrifying and right all at once. Althea did not die that year. Against expectations, her condition stabilized. Experimental treatments extended her time, turning weeks into months, months into cautious hope. Marcus stood beside her through every scan and setback, learning the language of medicine, the rhythms of caregiving. Their relationship moved beyond the hospital walls. On good days, Althea walked slowly through sunlit parks with Jamir, teaching him the names of colors in leaves and sky. Marcus watched them together, his heart full and aching, aware of how precious and temporary happiness could be. A year after opening the wrong door, Marcus found himself standing in a small courthouse chapel flooded with daylight. Althea stood beside him, thinner but radiant, wearing a simple dress that caught the sun like a promise. Jamir held the rings with solemn pride. There was no grand crowd, no certainty about the future, only a shared commitment to love honestly in whatever time they were given. When Marcus said his vows, his voice steady despite the weight of everything they had survived, he understood that marriage was not about guarantees. It was about choosing each other in the present again and again. Life after the wedding was not magically easier. Althea's health remained fragile. Marcus continued to work long hours. There were hospital visits and financial stress and nights when fear crept in uninvited. But there was also laughter at breakfast tables, sunlight warming their living room, Jamir falling asleep between them during afternoon movies. Marcus learned that joy did not erase pain, it existed alongside it, brighter for the contrast. Years later, Marcus would often think back to that first mistake, that wrong turn in a hallway. He would marvel at how easily he could have missed everything that followed. Althea lived longer than anyone predicted, long enough to see Jamir start middle school, long enough to paint again on good days, her canvases filled with light. When her time eventually came, it was peaceful, surrounded by love she had once believed she might never know again. Marcus held her hand, grateful rather than broken, understanding that their story had always been about presence, not permanence. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness and love can grow in the most unexpected places, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps stories like this reach others who might need a reminder that hope can arrive through the wrong door at the right time. And before this story ends, I ask you to leave a comment sharing one moment in your life when a small mistake or unexpected turn led to something meaningful, because your story might be the kindness someone else needs today. Marcus would go on to tell Jamir that life rarely followed straight paths, that sometimes the most important moments came disguised as errors. In the bright clarity of daytime, he learned to forgive himself for grief, to open doors without knowing what waited on the other side. and every time sunlight streamed through a window, warming his face, he remembered the woman who taught him that love did not need forever to be real.